I'm Zak Greenwalt, and this week we are going to be going over the last couple months of the local market here in Sun Valley. Now, what we're going to get into is prices are plateauing, but demand and the fundamentals remain strong. Let's get into this. Median sales price. Let's look at February and March. So if you look at 2020 is doing, we're looking at two data points here from 2025 and 2026. So let's go ahead and take a look at 2025 in February. What was going on then? We had a median price point of nearly 1.3 million. In March of 2025, we had a median price point of 850,000. Now, that is on a month-over-month basis, that's not a big concern. We're looking more of a trend line here. So let's go ahead and take a look at February of 2026. We had a median price point of 988,000, and we had a median price point in March of 819,000. Now, this doesn't indicate to me that we're going to see falling prices by any means. When you see a higher price point, a recalculation is not really something to be concerned about. The fundamentals of this market remain very strong. So here is what I would consider for our price points. Know that we are on relatively stable ground. Prices, I think, will remain relatively secure for the most part because inventory is down, and we will get into that part in the video in a little bit. Ground to a degree, and that's good news overall. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our pending sales. Now, considering the macro climate right now, the Middle East conflict, the bond market going a little crazy, and elevated price points at the gas station, I think there's a really good story to talk about in here. If you look at February, we saw a moderate decline. We had 40 pendings in February of this year versus 42 in 2025. Not a really big change there. Didn't see it go up, but not a big pullback in demand. And the same thing this March, 45 pendings in March versus 49. All things considered, in the month of March, with as volatile as it was, seeing that demand remain strong in our market is a very good indication that the buyer is here and wants to be here and is ready to execute on contracts. Now, again, if they purchase it and put it under contract, does it get to the closing table? Well, let's have a look there. You can see that we've got 37 closed units in February of this year. That's an increase from the year before, and 31 in March. That's an increase from March of last year. So these deals are getting to the closing table. And again, with the amount of volatility in the market, that is a healthy sign that deals are being executed. Let's talk about active units. And this is where the story really remains the most interesting for the most part, is that we have less active inventory than we did this time last year. Now, if you'll recall, coming into 2026, my prediction was that we would see an increase in listings. And for the first 3 months of the year, my prediction is not coming true. Last February, we had 283 active residential listings across all of Blaine County. We had 252 in February. In March, we had 286 and 241 this March. So we are seeing a pullback in active listings. Now, I know just talking to other agents, we are going to see an increase of some listings in the near term and going into the summer. We're talking about things like that, but is it a meaningful enough number? That I don't know yet. I will certainly keep you guys posted. Inventory, what does this mean? How long would it take to sell through our current crop? Let's just remember, anything less than the 5-month mark is going to be a seller's market. And where are we? We are at 4.5 months supply of inventory for all of Blaine County on the residential side of things. Now, when I look at this is a broad picture of the market, and it shows us in a seller's market. But we know that real estate is a micro product, and that does not mean that every single product is in a seller's market. There are pockets of this market that are in a buyer's market. And I think what I'll do is, in one of these upcoming videos, is do a further breakdown on the Hailey market, the Ketchum market specifically, and let you know what each market is doing so you guys know what is happening. At the end of the day, the biggest thing to know here is that the health of the overall market is in a seller's category, but that doesn't mean it applies to you specifically. So if you want to know what's going on with your home, your condo, your piece of land, give me a call and let's talk about what that means for you specifically. Now let's talk about days on market. And there's an interesting story that is going to come up here. We have 98 on average as of March down from last year. And we had 92 in February, and that was down slightly from 2025. So let's just call it 100 days on market is your average time before a contract gets executed on a residential property in Blaine County. Now let's go back to the narrative and the thought of how volatile March was in regards to rates. We saw it go from about 5.8% for a 30-year fixed mortgage to nearly 6.5% in about a 10-day period. And I think we all know what's going on at the gas pump because it is nearly $1 more than it was just a few weeks ago. With that said, though, we saw 20 contracts get executed this last week alone, in the last week of March. 20 contracts executed. 14 of those contracts were less than the average days on market. 7 of those 14 were under 10 days on the market. What does that tell me? That tells me that the buyer is there. They're waiting for the correct property, well priced with the amenities that they are looking for, and they are jumping on top of it. Again, 20 executed contracts in a volatile time, 14 of those below the average, and 7 under 10 days. You guys get your prices right. Be ready to sell, because if that is the case, the buyer is going to jump all over it. All right. We talked about the specific market, right? We need to know what it all means for you. So if you have a house in Bellevue, that might mean specifically one thing for you. If you have a condo in Ketchum, that's going to mean something different. So if you have any questions on what this means, let me know. Let's have a conversation and let's go through this and talk about how it impacts you directly. If you find any value in these videos, guys, I love doing them. I love hearing the feedback I get. Go ahead and hit subscribe, give it a like, and I will see you next week.